Hi, it's Katrina. A civilization has just been found that nobody knew existed. Today, you and I are getting lost in the jungle, exploring myths of monsters, cities lost for thousands of years, and the oldest pyramids on the planet. Let's go! The Nameless Civilization. One of the biggest discoveries of the last decade has just been made in the jungles of Venezuela. I can't wait to tell you about the amazing pieces of rock art that have been found, belonging to a civilization that nobody knew existed. Finding a new civilization is crazy in 2024. Yet a team of archaeologists in Venezuela did just that. They identified 20 rock art sites in the southeast part of the country within the Canaima National Park. The art goes back thousands of years. There are a lot of examples of rock art throughout the jungles of South America, but the designs here are unique. José Miguel Pérez Gómez with the Simón Bolívar University said they represent a new culture previously unknown. As for the art itself, it looks like what you would expect ancient rock art to look like. The designs are known as pictograms, red geometric motifs. There are rows of lines, dots, and X's. There are patterns shaped like stars and swirling lines that connect to create mesmerizing design. It's all very abstract. The ancient art would look right at home in a fancy art exhibit somewhere. Pérez Gómez said nobody on the team understands why the ancient people created the art. They haven't been able to translate anything or find meaning in it. The archaeologist said it's almost impossible to get into the minds of people who were living so many thousands of years ago. That being said, the archaeologists do have some educated guesses. They believe the strange drawings had a ritual significance to the ancient people. The depictions could be related to birth, life, disease, the changing of the seasons. What do you think they might mean? All right, now for the info you've been waiting for: the age of the art and the culture that made it. There's only one problem. I don't actually know how old the rock art is. The researchers haven't been able to figure it out, but they did mention that the rock art is fairly similar to other examples that have been found in Brazil from 4,000 years ago. And on top of that, Pérez Gómez said the examples in Venezuela could be even older. This could be a civilization more than 5,000 years old, and it couldn't be in a more amazing place. The Canaima National Park is humongous, nearly the size of Belgium. It's home to the legendary Angel Falls, the tallest waterfall in the world. Researchers are starting to think this park could have been ground zero for the development of one of the earliest Amazonian cultures ever. This civilization, which currently doesn't even have a name, may have started here at Angel Falls and then spread to other places using branches of the Amazon River. They could have traveled all the way to Colombia, Brazil, and who knows where else. Sacrifices from far and wide. A scientific team has analyzed skulls recovered from an ancient sacred cenote in Mexico. What they found is going to shock you. The skulls belong to human sacrifices. But hang in there for a minute, because that is not the shocking part. The lead researcher of the project was T. Douglas Price at the University of Wisconsin. He and his team analyzed the tooth enamel from Mayan sacrifices who died 1,000 years ago. The tooth enamel was able to reveal where the sacrifices came from in Mexico. And let's just say they weren't the next-door neighbors. Some of the victims came from thousands of miles away. This seems to suggest the Maya had a complex trading network, and humans were the things being traded. Let me back things up a bit and take you to the cenote where the skulls were found. The cenote is a natural limestone sinkhole that looks kind of like a portal to hell. Its mouth is almost 200 feet wide, located in the ancient jungle city of Chichen Itza. Looking down into the cenote almost gives you a sense of vertigo, like you're standing at the edge of a well without a bottom. The site was initially dredged at the start of the 20th century. Archaeologists brought up amazing artifacts made of jade, gold, and pottery. They also found some weapons and the remains of textiles. But what people mostly focused on were the bones of the over 200 sacrifice victims who had been offered to the Black Pit to appease the gods. At the peak of Maya civilization in the 10th century AD, they were sacrifice happy, especially at Chichen Itza, which had a population of around 50,000. It was one of the biggest cities in the empire. Have you ever wondered why Mexico has so many cenotes? Most of Mexico doesn't. They are primarily found in the Yucatan Peninsula, which is a giant limestone shelf. The whole peninsula is like a block of limestone, which has been perforated like Swiss cheese thanks to rising and falling sea levels over thousands of years. Not all cenotes were sacred to the Maya. Some were used as offering pits, while others were treasured for their delicious fresh water. Out of the 200 skeletal remains found at the cenote in Chichen Itza, about half of them were children. The remainder were mostly male, with only a few female skeletons found. Do you want me to tell you the condition these skeletons were found in? I'm warning you, it is exceptionally brutal. You've been warned. The skeletons had all been horribly injured. The bones also showed evidence of weathering, meaning they had probably been put on display for quite some time after death and before being cast into the waters of the cenote. Some of the skeletons had been ripped apart as if mauled by a great beast. Some had holes in their skulls made by percussive tools, and this means that many of the skulls had probably been displayed on trophy racks. Okay, that's it for the gruesome stuff. The point of the recent study of the tooth enamel was to find where the sacrifices came from. And what scientists learned is that they came from all over, from every corner of the Maya Empire and beyond. Florida Ant Ambulance. There's only one animal in the world that performs life-saving operations. Human beings are the only ones that perform surgery to save other members of their own species, right? Actually, wait, that's not true. Scientists have just found the second known animal that does the exact same thing. There is now another living creature that has been found to perform surgery, but it's a bug. Ants in Florida have been spotted treating their friends' wounds. The implications of this discovery are huge. Ants are already some of the most sophisticated things on the planet. There are not many creatures that function with the sort of organizational skills as ants, except for maybe bees. Scientists from the University of Würzburg in Germany discovered the species Megaponera analis treating infected wounds with an antimicrobial substance produced in their own glands. That was in 2023, and it was exciting enough on its own. These African ants have their own natural healing juices that they can spit on an infected wound to heal it. That's like if you had polysporin in your saliva and could lick your friend's wound until it was healed. After finding this out, the team of scientists were curious about ants living in thick Florida wilderness. Carpenter ants don't have an antimicrobial substance in their glands. So the team wanted to learn how they took care of wounded members in their colony. What they discovered was even more shocking. These ants are surgeons. The team observed the ants treating other ants' injuries by cleaning the wounds with their mouth, amputating the leg by biting it, and then sending them on their way. Survival rate was between 90 and 95%. Ant amputation is no joke. How long do you think it takes to amputate a leg if you're an ant? It takes a whopping 40 minutes. But anyway, the science behind it is nothing short of miraculous. The ants are able to diagnose a wound by looking at it. They can see if it's infected or sterile, then they treat the wound accordingly. Eric Frank, the leader of the German researchers, said the only medical system that can rival that of the ants is the human medical system. But the ants don't have to pay for theirs. Their amputation is totally free of charge. The oldest pyramids in the world. I'm going to tell you something very surprising. The oldest pyramids in the world are not in Egypt. They are in the Brazilian jungle. They predate their Egyptian counterparts by centuries. In 1996, it was announced that scientists found pyramids from 5,000 years ago on the Atlantic coast of Brazil. Some were found to contain hundreds of human burials. Researchers found stone plaques, carved whales, and other artifacts. If scientists have known about these pyramids since the 1990s, why have they seemingly ignored them? There are some huge differences between the pyramids of ancient Egypt and the pyramids of Brazil. They are both tall, spiky triangles, and they were both used as mortuaries. But that's where the similarities end. The Egyptian pyramids were constructed of solid stone. The ones in Brazil were made from seashells. When archaeologists found the pyramids, they didn't realize what they were. They thought the piles of seashells were ancient garbage dumps. Only after 4 long years of research into what scientists thought were mounds of rubbish did they realize their mistake. These pyramids were initially 160 feet tall, absolutely enormous. In terms of volume, they were far bigger than the earliest pyramids in Egypt. Their bases covered around 37 acres. They may not have been as tall as the Egyptian pyramids, but they were far bulkier. Everything about these pyramids is amazing, but unfortunately, scientists still don't know much about them. They were built around 3000 BC, but almost none of them are left standing. Researchers estimated less than 10% of all the Brazilian pyramids are left, and most of them are so ruined that it's hard to even study them. Locals in Brazil scavenged the raw material from the pyramids and used it to build roads. Imagine if the people of Cairo dismantled the pyramids of Giza to build a highway. That's pretty much what happened in Brazil. One of the few surviving examples of a Brazilian pyramid is one near the town of Jaguaruna. It covers 25 acres of land and still reaches 100 feet high. It's lost about 65 feet of its original height. Scientists can't say for certain, but they think a structure may have been on the top of the pyramid. It might have had a building on it, just like how the pyramids in Mexico have temples at the top. Only the pyramids in Brazil are 3,000 years older than the ones in Central America and Mexico. You probably want to know who is responsible for building these pyramids. According to Professor Edna Morley from the National Heritage Institute in Brazil, it was the indigenous people of Brazil. They were far more sophisticated than anyone has ever given them credit for. In 1996, Edna Morley said the discovery of these pyramids would revolutionize the way scientists looked at ancient Brazilian cultures. But that was 30 years ago, and little more has been done. Most people don't even know these pyramids exist. Did you before now? The Amazonian dinosaur. The Amazon jungle used to be filled with terrifying dinosaurs. One of those terrifying dinosaurs was a behemoth of a lizard, a sauropod so big it could have sat on your house. Out of all the dinosaurs, it might have one of the coolest names. I introduce you now to the Amazonsaurus. Its name means Amazon lizard and had a very long neck, a long tail, and probably stood 40 feet from tip to tip. In 2010, paleontologist Gregory S. Paul estimated the creature to be around 11,000 pounds. Until recently, scientists had never been able to confirm that dinosaurs lived in the Amazon. Prior to 2004, the only proof of dinos in the Amazon was a single tooth. One measly tooth. It wasn't enough to prove definitively that dinos roamed the region. Then, in January of 2004, scientists from the Rio de Janeiro Federal University dropped some major news. They announced the discovery of dinosaur fossils in the jungle. The fossils of Amazonsaurus were excavated from the Itapecuru Formation in Brazil, its bones dating to 125 million years ago. This was a miracle. The high humidity and rapid decay of all organic matter made paleontologists think that dinosaur hunting in the Amazon was a lost cause. And in a way, it still is. Very few dinosaurs have been found in the Amazon since. Did you know it was so hard to find fossils in the jungle? Let me know in the comments. The horse monster of the Philippines. What do you think would be the scariest animal to mix with Slender Man? How about a horse? In the Philippines, there's a terrifying creature of folklore known as the tikbalang. It's as if Slender Man were a shadowy, spindly horse. The creature is tall, lanky, and really bony. It's kind of humanoid in shape, but has the head of a horse and stomps around on its hooves. It's said that the monster lives in the rainforest and high up on the mountains, always hiding from human civilization. The tikbalang is all disjointed looking, with its limbs disproportionately long. When it squats, its knees poke above its head. And while it might seem like a more frightening version of Bigfoot that couldn't possibly be real, many people in rural parts of the Philippines jungle still live in fear of it. What's crazy is how long people have been afraid of this monstrosity. The origin of the tikbalang can be traced back to the very roots of Hinduism and the ancient religion of the Philippines. Thousands of years ago in the Philippines, people believed in animalism. What this means is that everything to them had a consciousness, every single aspect of nature. They were connected to the stones, the seas, the trees, and especially the animals. Everything in animalism has power, room to the grains of sand between your toes. It was somewhere during the transition from pagan-like animalism to adopting Hinduism that the tikbalang became part mythical monster and part deity. Hinduism showed up around 200 AD. During this cultural shift, tikbalang may have been born from the Hindu god Hayagriva, who was Vishnu's horse-headed avatar. Hayagriva has been worshipped since 2000 BC. In the 16th century, Spanish chronicler Father Juan de Plasencia documented indigenous beliefs in the Philippines. He said the indigenous people feared and revered the tikbalang. He described it as a ghost, a goblin, or a devil. The father also claimed that people would make pacts with the monster. So what's the reality here? Is there a terrifying horse demon in the jungles of the Philippines or not? Unfortunately, there is as much proof that the tikbalang exists as there is to support the existence of the Loch Ness Monster. Lots of people claim that they have encountered the beast, but there isn't a single piece of physical evidence to prove it. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. The creation of the Maya people. The creation of the Maya people can be traced to the jungles of Guatemala. There is an ancient text that describes exactly how the Maya people came into being. It's a twist on the old Adam and Eve story, involving a pair of twins rather than a romantic couple. You're going to want to hear this. The text I'm talking about is the Popol Vuh. It pains me to say it, but the Popol Vuh no longer exists in its original form. The oldest surviving copy is an account written by a Spaniard in 1701. In 1701, a Dominican priest named Francisco Jimenez arrived in the Quiche territory of Guatemala. He transcribed and translated the Popol Vuh, the traditional creation myth that has been passed down in the Quiche society for centuries. The Quiche were a group of people you don't hear much about these days. They were a faction of the Maya living in Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, El Salvador, and parts of Mexico. They had their own language and their own states within the Maya Empire. It was kind of like how French people have their own province and language in the country of Canada. So Francisco compiled the myths of the Popol Vuh, and that was that. Over the next 240 years, the manuscript bounced around from one institution to another. It arrived in Guatemala City, somehow ended up in France, and was rediscovered at the Newberry Library in Chicago in 1941. The Popol Vuh tells the story of Hunahpu and Xbalanque. They were heroic twins who defeated the death lords of the underworld and rose to heaven to become the sun and the moon. Through their actions in the underworld, the twins paved the way for human beings to live on Earth. A city lost for 1,000 years. In a remote part of the Honduran rainforest lies the legendary White City. It's deep in the jungle, known in the ancient myths as La Ciudad Blanca. Its name makes you think of tall white pillars of stone, crumbling temples, and vines hanging over epic statues. If legend is to be believed, the city was built 4,000 years ago by an unknown civilization who worshipped a monkey god. In 2015, a team of scientists went in search of this legendary city. Up until then, most people didn't even think it was real. Even archaeologists were suspicious, treating the White City like El Dorado or the Lost City of Z. Finding it did not seem like a possibility. Archaeologists thought it was hopeless, and then they found it. The scientific community had their collective jaw on the floor. In La Mosquitia region of the country, structures were found swallowed by the jungle that had been that way for over 1,000 years. This was physical proof. The actual city itself. The White City was so heavily encumbered by vegetation that archaeologists didn't even realize they were standing in the middle of it. I will say this, it's no surprise that it took so long to find the lost city. La Mosquitia is 1,300 square miles of pristine rainforest. It is one of the most biologically diverse places in Central America. It's considered one of the last strongholds of unspoiled wildlife on the planet, even though it's currently threatened by illegal logging and wildlife traffickers. There was one other person who may have been in the city. In the 1940s, American explorer Theodore Moore returned from an expedition to La Mosquitia. According to National Geographic, he claimed to have found thousands of artifacts and the ruins of a megalithic city. Inside the city was an enormous statue of a monkey god. Nobody knows if the city Theodore found and the city uncovered in 2015 are the same. There could be multiple cities hidden in La Mosquitia. It's hard enough to focus on one. The leader of the 2015 expedition was Doug Elkins. He learned of the legend of the White City in the 1990s and has been plotting to find it ever since. In 2012, Doug was able to use LiDAR technology to scan the jungle from a survey plane. He used laser pulses to create a 3D map of the ground. The map revealed hidden shapes lurking down below the canopy. So Doug put together an expedition. As they marched through the rainforest, hardly able to see more than a few feet in front of them because of the trees, signs of life started to appear. First, there was a boulder with a petroglyph on it, a man peeking out through the foliage. It was clearly old and worn. As they kept going, they kept finding more evidence of a lost civilization. They found mounds, the remains of plazas, and vessels decorated with images of vultures. They even found a pyramid. It was like a scene right from Indiana Jones. A pyramid in the impossibly thick jungle. Animalistic stone sculptures buried around its base. One of the team members, Oscar Castro, was able to date the objects to roughly 1000 AD. The statues buried around the pyramid may have been part of a shamanistic religion. Professor of anthropology Christopher Fisher suggested they were representations of a shaman's spiritual state during ritual transformation. There were so many artifacts in the ruins, there were too many to count. It was definitely too many to bring out of the jungle. But was this truly the fabled city of the monkey god? Doug said he doesn't know. He believes the entire jungle used to be urbanized. The city he and his team found is probably only one piece of a much larger puzzle. All of Honduras may have been densely populated by a thriving civilization, one that was comparable to ancient Greece or Rome. What I want to know is where they went. It seems like it should be such an obvious question, yet scientists don't have any answers. 1,000 years ago, everyone seems to have picked up and gone. They abandoned the entire region, leaving it to be swallowed by the hungry jungle. Any theories as to what happened? Rewriting history. History is being rewritten in the Amazon rainforest right now. Archaeologists are studying a series of ditches that they say have been around since before the jungle existed. These ditches, which were presumably made by human hands, predate the jungle itself. This is the kind of news you just don't expect to hear, ever. Scientists are struggling to make sense of human history now that they know how long people have been living in the Amazon. The ditches have been found mostly in Bolivia and Brazil, and nobody knows what they were for. Some of the ditches are square, looking like the foundations of towers or other square structures. Other ditches are circular, maybe like deep moats that may have surrounded small settlements. Archaeologists have guessed that maybe the ditches were used for drainage, or maybe for defensive purposes. They could have even been religious in nature. There is no single solution yet, but the really intriguing part is their age. When exactly did prehistoric people start changing the Amazonian landscape? In the 1980s, archaeologists didn't have a very good understanding of civilizations in South America. They assumed indigenous people lived in the Amazon in the same way wild animals do. Scientists assumed that they lived off the land without making changes to the landscape. They never built cities, farmed, or did anything like that. It was believed that Amazonian tribes lived in small villages and were one with nature. But that wasn't the case at all. In the 1980s came mass deforestation. Over the last 40 years, as more and more of the jungle has been destroyed, more ancient ruins have been found. Earthworks and ditches have been spotted that are more than 16 feet deep. It's now become clear to scientists that people in the Amazon did change their environment. They had likely built farms and cities, and they were doing it before the jungle had fully evolved. About 2,000 years ago was when the Amazon jungle, as you and I know it today, began to take shape. Something changed that caused the previous drought-resistant trees to be replaced by evergreens. The Amazon wasn't a desert, but it wasn't the thick jungle of today. The people who built these earthworks did so before the jungle swallowed them up. They may have been literally eaten by the rise of the Amazon. A whole human society gobbled up by nature. Raised by jungle monkeys. Marina Chapman is the real-world version of Tarzan. She spent her youth being raised by monkeys in the jungle. She doesn't quite know how old she is, perhaps in her 70s. The tale of her life is so unbelievable that a decade ago, when she wrote a book about it, mainstream publishers wouldn't touch it. They didn't believe that Marina had really been raised by monkeys. Marina Chapman lived for roughly 5 years in the Colombian jungle without a single human person to talk to. She had to fend for herself, surviving on nothing but berries, roots, and the occasional banana dropped by a monkey high above her head. She slept in the holes in trees like a raccoon. She scurried about on all fours like a dog. By the time Marina was rescued by hunters, she'd forgotten how to speak. Being rescued was where Marina's horror story began. She would soon wish that she was still in the jungle. After Marina was taken from the forest, she was sold into a brothel in the city of Cucuta, where she lived on the street. Then she was enslaved by a family of cartel members. Only through sheer luck did she get saved and sent to England, where she was living in Bradford, Yorkshire 10 years ago while writing her book. For a woman raised by monkeys, Marina ended up with a pretty normal life. She lived in Yorkshire for 30 years, married a retired scientist named John, and had 2 daughters. One of her daughters became a musician, and the other one worked for a pregnancy crisis center. Quite a way to go from the Colombian rainforest. According to Marina, her first memory was of right before her 5th birthday. She remembered playing near her home when 2 strangers came up behind her and kidnapped her. Marina's next memory was of being in the jungle. She had been kidnapped and then dropped off in the middle of nowhere for no apparent reason. Marina started walking, but clearly went in the wrong direction. She walked and walked until stumbling upon a family of monkeys. And that was when she stopped walking and settled in for a very long stay. The monkeys befriended her. They taught Marina which food was good to eat, which water was good to drink, and which trees were good for lounging. She ended up doing everything with the monkeys. They adopted her into their family. Marina even learned to make the same monkey noises as them to communicate. Marina's family is convinced her story is true, but what are your thoughts? Could a person really go from being raised by monkeys to having such a normal life? Or the difficult life that she went through after? Would you survive being lost in the jungle at the age of 5? Let me know in the comments. The gold airplanes from Colombia. There was an ancient civilization in Colombia that may have had access to aerial technology. If they didn't have access to airplanes, there's a good chance they saw them flying in the skies above their jungle. There are even artifacts to back this up. The Quimbaya civilization appeared in Colombia's Antiochian region about 2,500 years ago. Their society continued to prosper for the next millennium, with the people vanishing into obscurity around 600 AD. The Quimbaya are known today for their excellent goldsmithing works, which have been found in the ruins of their civilization. From the sheer number of golden artifacts found in Colombia, archaeologists are confident that the Quimbayan craftsmen had a very high level of technical sophistication. They were almost too sophisticated. One of the best collections of Quimbaya gold treasure was discovered in 1890. Over 400 items were found, including crowns, musical instruments, mysterious golden figures, ceremonial vessels, and pendants. It wasn't archaeologists who found the treasure, but grave robbers. Grave robbers funded by the President of the Republic, Carlos Holguín. He had the looted grave goods sent as a gift to the Queen Governor of Spain. Out of all the Quimbaya artifacts that have been found, the airplanes are the most mysterious. Some call them the Quimbaya jets. They have stirred a major amount of controversy because they look exactly like little airplanes. You've probably seen them mentioned on the show Ancient Aliens on the History Channel. Many people believe them to be depictions of flying vehicles. The Quimbaya probably didn't build jets. If they had access to technology for building fighter jets, archaeologists would have found more than gold trinkets and decorated pottery. But what if they saw jets in the sky? What if they witnessed visitors from another planet in the atmosphere? It could be that the Quimbaya recreated what they saw in the sky in gold miniature. It's a possibility, although it's one that mainstream scientists probably don't want to talk about. Most archaeologists have dismissed the notion altogether. They say the Quimbaya jets aren't airplanes, but frogs or insects that happen to look a little like planes. What do you think they are? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed.
Alta Brisa Ruins. There are 20 archaeological sites within the Mexican city of Mérida, and around the city there are an estimated 50 more. Mérida was a major hub for Maya activity centuries ago, even as far back as 2,300 years. It should come as no surprise that a mysterious ruin was discovered behind a pair of luxury condominiums in the Alta Brisa neighborhood. Just behind its tall walls and shining windows is a hidden world, because this neighborhood happens to be at the edge of the jungle. As of right now, the site here has no official designation. Local archaeologists are aware of it, but there haven't been any excavations or investigations done. It's just an obscure pile of rock in the jungle outside of town, and yet it could be extremely important. There are the ruins of temples, there's something that looks like an enormous pyramid with trees growing out of it, and it's all been lost since the 3rd century BC. There are so many remains hidden underneath dense vegetation, being swallowed by nature, that it was almost definitely a city. Much of it might even be hidden underneath the luxury condominiums. Locals have taken pictures of stairways, esplanades, and at least a dozen considerable structures. Nobody knows what the place is, but all evidence points to a major city similar to Chichen Itza or Tikal. Mystery City in Sumatra. Alfred Isaac Middleton was an explorer obsessed with finding the ancient jungle city of Dalitu in Sumatra. At least, this is what the rumors say. The truth is that Alfred is one of history's greatest mysteries. He was supposedly a Victorian-era Indiana Jones type who explored Africa, the Amazon, and the depths of the Southeast Asian jungles. He lived in the late 1800s and allegedly vanished during an expedition. The issue with Middleton and the lost city of Dalitu is that we have no proof either truly existed. There are strange photographs that have been circling online for years, showing a man in an explorer's hat standing in front of mysterious ruins. The ruins are deep in the jungle and appear to be crafted in the shape of ancient spaceships. The photos show bizarre monuments that look exactly like modern space shuttles, and some that look like flying saucers built into the sides of mountains. These photos also show groups of tribal-like people gathered around the mountains. And yet these photos have never been certified as real, and neither has Alfred. According to vague sources, Alfred was on a mission to discover the lost city when he was taken prisoner by a group of men in the jungle. Then he was killed in captivity, and his body was lost forever. Australian warplane. Willie Flynn discovered the ruins of a mysterious warplane from World War II on a recent jungle expedition. Willie lives in Papua New Guinea and heard of the warplane from a pig hunter who had come across it while tracking some animals. Willie knows the hills around East New Britain fairly well, and so he went to search for the wreckage himself. This was no easy mission. Willie, who was only 15 when he made the discovery, had to cross jungle rivers, hike through dense bush, and had to negotiate with the chief of the local village just to be allowed through the area. But when he finally did climb up the side of a forested mountain, cutting his way through the jungle with a machete, he found the metal debris he was looking for. Willie discovered parts of the airplane scattered across the hillside, pieces of a propeller, some guns from World War II, and pieces of a door. It took a lot of digging, but Willie soon uncovered the bulk of the Australian warplane. He also found parts of a leather watch and even a pilot's vest that may have been worn by the man flying the aircraft 80 years ago. The wrecked plane is believed to have contained 4 Australian soldiers who ran into trouble and crashed in the woods and were never found. This is one of over 600 crashed airplanes that landed in the jungles of Papua New Guinea during the war. Many of them have never been recovered. Shibatun. In eastern Yucatan, there is a Maya paradise called Shibatun. It's deep in the jungle near Oshhuat's Natural Park and was once a thriving city. It was founded around the year 300 BC and then abandoned between 800 and 1000 AD. There is very little left to show that a city ever stood here. Most of the buildings have been disintegrated into piles of rubble. And yet that hasn't stopped archaeologists from identifying ceremonial temples, Maya palaces, and a pyramid almost 100 feet tall. They even found a kind of ancient stadium used for a traditional Maya ball game. All of this stuff is currently hiding in the swampy jungle, surrounded by deep cenotes and dangerous lagoons. Shibatun translates into ancient Maya as the place where water is collected. This city was almost certainly a paradise in the Maya world, a harmonious community tucked away in the jungle with ample fresh water and bountiful soil. However, its discovery has been a disaster. The city was first found in the 1990s, then forgotten because nobody wanted to put in the effort of excavating. The only ones who did put in the effort were the looters. When the city was recently rediscovered, archaeologists found all the treasure had already been stolen by enthusiastic thieves who pillaged everything they could find. Carmen Varela Torresilla, a Spanish archaeologist investigating the site, says she and her team discovered new structures and the remains of some ceramics. But all the good stuff has already been collected and is most likely on the black market. As for this site in prehistory, researchers still don't know much. It was definitely a megalithic city, and may have been influenced by the better-known Maya metropolis called Izamal. And now for number 6. But first, I want to give a big shout out to Daryl Boshears and Brad Long. Thanks so much for watching and supporting Origins Explained. If you are new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join the family. The tallest tree in the jungle. Scientists have just found the tallest tree in the Amazon rainforest. It looms high in the sky like a natural giant over the rest of the jungle. It was spotted in northern Brazil, inside the Iratapuru River Nature Reserve. But just how tall is the tallest tree in the jungle, really? Researchers say it stands about as tall as a 25-story building. It's been measured at approximately 290 feet high and 32.5 feet in diameter. Forest engineer Diego Armando Silva, who is the one behind the organization of the expedition, said the tree was one of the most beautiful things he had ever seen. He called it divine and something truly miraculous. It was Diego who first came across satellite images of the tree and knew he needed to get a team out in the jungle to find it. But these satellite images didn't measure up to the real thing. It was incredible, standing strong in the middle of a forest where humans had never set foot before. This was in a truly remote part of the jungle, only accessible by bushwhacking and suffering quite a few spider bites. Believe it or not, the team couldn't even reach the tree the first time they tried. The expedition was a disaster, and the team had to turn back. They'd received too many bug bites, and the threat of dying from disease was real, and they ran out of supplies. The final expedition took over 13 days through the mountainous jungle just to reach the greatest tree of all trees. Diego believes it's 400 to 600 years old. Would you go through all that to visit the tree in real life? Let me know in the comments below. Mysterious fangs. In the remote jungle of northern Peru, a mysterious monolith was recently uncovered. The monolith is riddled with circular patterns, swirls, and fangs. The patterns found on the monument, identified thanks to scientists using 3D scans, are so abstract researchers had a hard time describing them in words. However, one of the patterns was very clear. 2 fangs were engraved in the solid stone, and they were likely meant to be representations of a feline deity. This monolith was extremely difficult to find. Researchers had to hike, ride horses, and fight their way through the jungle. They climbed from 6,000 feet to 13,000 feet above sea level to a remote village inhabited by people who very rarely see outsiders. And only there did they come across the ancient monolith. The monolith was carved by ancient hands long before the Inca civilization ever existed. It was likely made around 200 BC, before writing in Peru even existed. Because of the lack of written history, nobody knows the name of the mysterious feline deity. Researchers only know of its existence because of other fangs carved in other monuments found in the remote jungle. This was a mysterious god or goddess worshipped by some of the earliest human beings to ever live in the Peruvian forest. Another interesting thing is that the Inca likely discovered this stone as well. We know the Inca believed the region to be sacred and built some bathhouses nearby. It's possible that for the Inca, the mysterious monument was just as big of a mystery to them as it is to us. Jungle puppies. Ancient ruins and mysterious stone monoliths are hardly the only thing being discovered in the jungle these days. For the first time in history, jungle puppies have been captured on film in Peru. According to National Geographic, a recent effort to catalog animals in the rainforests of South America resulted in rare footage of Amazonian short-eared dogs. The Amazonian dogs are some of the most elusive inhabitants of the jungle. To put them into perspective, researchers know more about jaguars than they do about these ghost canines. They are incredibly smart, avoid scientists like the plague, and were only recently captured on camera thanks to traps set up in the bush. Daniel Caucedo, a professional ecologist, had to trek through miles of dense foliage and set up hundreds of expensive cameras just to capture a brief glimpse of the ghost dogs. It was worth it because one of the cameras picked up a mother and her puppies. It recorded the mother dog going back and forth from her den and carrying her puppies in her mouth. It was amazing because such footage has never been captured before. Nobody has ever seen a jungle dog caring for her puppies in the wild. These canines are so elusive, we don't even know how many exist. We don't know if they are on the edge of extinction, and we don't know how they survive in the wild jungle. The Amazon Pyramids. In 1976, one of NASA's satellites orbiting the Earth photographed something strange in southeast Peru. The photograph was taken above the Madre de Dios region of the Amazon jungle. What the image showed was a set of formations that look like pyramids. There appeared to be at least 8 pyramids visible through the jungle foliage, although the image was blurry and the structures couldn't be 100% confirmed. They soon became known as the Pyramids of Paratoari. The photograph soon leaked. Explorers and archaeologists got a hold of it, and the hunt began. Speculation started to circulate that the formations were pyramids left in the jungle by a lost ancient civilization thousands of years ago. Some even connected the pyramids to the mysterious lost city of Paititi, an ancient Inca metropolis located east of the Andes. Gregory Deyermengian, an explorer out of Boston, went on various expeditions between 1984 and 2011 in search of mysterious jungle ruins. He documented the Inca ruins of Mameria, found the petroglyphs of Pucharo, and documented the pyramids of Paratoari. Unfortunately, he was never able to confirm the existence of pyramids. He did reach the mysterious formations captured in the NASA satellite photo, but they turned out to be natural formations. They looked like uniform buildings in the picture, but wound up being natural landforms kind of shaped like pyramids. Maybe next step, hopefully LiDAR. Sakti. After decades of searching, researchers in Mexico believe they have finally found the lost Maya city of Sakti. The mysterious city reached a peak population of only about 1,000 in the year 750 AD. This was tiny compared to most major Maya cities, and yet it was quite a bit older than some of the bigger settlements, carbon dated back to 750 BC. The site was identified thanks to a graduate student from the University of Pennsylvania. The student happened to learn of a limestone slab unearthed by a cattle rancher. The slab was decorated with a Maya calendar and other mysterious glyphs, and that led to the discovery of the city. So far, archaeologists have uncovered more stone slabs, ancient cooking tools, and the remains of a woman from 2,500 years ago. They found stone walls around the city center and a panel inscribed with the origin story of the city. The panel is decorated with images of war, floods, and a magical water serpent. It's not clear what Sakti's role was in the ancient Maya kingdom. Considering their small size, they couldn't have been all that powerful. However, researchers do say they likely had strong connections with the larger settlements up until their mysterious demise in the 9th century. Settlement in the Ramgarh jungle. A mysterious settlement from the 13th century has been discovered in the jungles of Ramgarh, India. Archaeologists were surveying the area when they came across the shocking remains of a massive settlement spanning an area of over 20 acres. Researchers found a rampart measuring over 700 feet made of solid stone. They also found a ruined gate, burnt bricks, and gigantic stone slabs. Many of these stone slabs were found with strange symbols and designs on them. Some were even carved with what appear to be weapons, from bows and arrows to tridents. It's unclear who lived in the settlement or what happened to it. It was discovered deep in a largely unpopulated forest in India, a place beyond the reach of most people. Researchers also found a footpath made of brick from the Stone Age, suggesting ancient humans lived in the region for thousands of years. Thanks for watching! How many more lost cities do you think are hiding in the jungles of the world? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Bye!